Just wanted to spark. I just be straight open with it when it comes to the quarterback position, right? We're very young at the quarterback. And we have to develop. We got to continue to develop. That was one of the reasons why I went and got Steve and Jelly at the second portal, because we knew what we were young at.
You're certainly young at quarterback. The development piece, not all there, though. Both Ricky Collins and Luke Carney saw action in today's game, yet it still wasn't enough as Pitt took down Syracuse 30-13. The fact that a true freshman was getting snaps under center to start the second half raises a lot of questions. Questions our two analysts, Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio, look to answer, because it's an Orange Press Pass, and it starts right now. Welcome inside our CitrusTV studios for another edition of Orange Press Pass, alongside the aforementioned Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. Absolutely chaos, I think, is the only way that you can describe this game between Pitt and Syracuse. It looked like it was close early on, and then not so much. Griffin, what's your first thought from this chaotic game?
My first thought is what was that? Like, so many things. It was just so demoralizing on all senses of the word. Just so confusing on how you came out of that game. Not many positives. Not a lot to just. It seemed like you came into that game with some semblances of hope, going on for bye week for 2 weeks, and then you come out of that just feeling minimal positives. Just so many questions. Then more questions than you entered the week having. Whether it's the quarterbacks, the pass rush looked good all of a sudden. Just so confusing, just don't come out with much confidence.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about questions that arise within this whole entire SU team. That's why my first thought is, what just happened? I mean, that was the, I don't want to say biggest mockery of football I've seen at SU, but like, there just looked like there was no clear direction within this team tonight. I mean, you had Luke Carney going in for, what was it, 5 total snaps. Yeah, he started the second half and then was pulled in the middle of a drive from a second to a third down. Like, there was just so many question marks surrounding this game, and that's why I truly don't know what just happened. That's my first thought. I can't say it any better than that.
Not many people know what happened, but in order to figure out what did happen, well, we have to look at the tape. So let's take a look at how it all went down inside the JMA Wireless Dome. These are two quote-unquote rivals that play each other, it seems like, every year. But early on, Pitt picked up exactly where they did at the end of last year. They picked off Kyle McCord 5 times. They did the same thing to Ricky Collins early on, Griffin.
First drive, this is just not the momentum building you want to start coming off a bye week. Just can't be how you want to start. That's now 6 interceptions on the year.
Well, then Mason Henschel, the true freshman himself, look at him with the legs turning and burning along the sideline, walking it in. Pitt took an early 7-0 lead, but then as this game would develop, you saw Henschel go towards the pass game. Look at how much time he has there in the pocket, John. He was just letting it fly, but ultimately Syracuse's defense would get one themselves.
We've already talked about it, the SU quarterback controversy. I mean, we're going to talk about Henschel in this one because, wow, he did not look all too impressive.
Well, you know who did look impressive there? Darryl Gill Jr. going full extension to grab that one. That tied the game at 7 apiece going into the second quarter. Ricky Collins, again, trying to make a big play, but that one just well too underthrown. Pittsburgh would grab a second interception off of Collins, and they would eventually go down to kick a field goal and take a 10-7 lead. Then at the end of the second quarter, Jack Stonehouse, all ACC punter, puts one deep down the field, tries to pin Pitt with no time. Well, think again. There goes Kenny Johnson, 66 yards, house call. 17-7 lead going into the locker room, and that was the big moment that everything started to change, Griffin.
It was. That seemed to be take all the air out of the building. You know, they made a big change in the second half, which wouldn't be enough.
Well, what was a big change was Luke Carney getting some action. There was a 6-yard rush that you saw there, but then eventually Collins back in the game trying to make a big play happen. Instead, it gets picked off clean back the other way, and the Panthers waltzing it into Syracuse territory before coming down. They would add an extra touchdown at the end, And that's how we get our 30-13 score. John, I'll go to you. A lot of variance from the Syracuse side, while Pitt was really spreading the offense everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pitt had a ton of rushing yards. To see Desmond Reed finished with only 40, but he had two other running backs behind him in a similar bracket in terms of rushing yards. So Pitt dominated on the ground while SU's offense just simply never caught up. You saw Fran Brown at halftime getting interviewed. They asked him, hey, what's got to change in the second half? Well, he just said more points, and that's what SU couldn't get.
Just the offense seems so dysfunctional all day. Ricky Collins, 3 interceptions and only 126 yards through the air. I mean, what are you doing? Only completed 50% of his passes. That's almost 2 weeks in a row. We're just really struggled. Your leading receiver has 34 yards, and just the offense couldn't do anything out there today.
Syracuse needed as much offense as they could get, and that's eventually why we saw that quarterback change in to start the second half. But we were all sitting here in studio while this game was happening, and we had some loud voices. We definitely were going at it between the three of us. But somebody that was experiencing those loud voices firsthand is our reporter, AJ Myers, who was in the Dome. AJ, we've got to talk about the biggest elephant in the room, that quarterback change in the third quarter. I'm curious for you, what did you see that was a big key difference, or maybe what was the difference between the two QBs?
Yeah, well, Nathaniel, I asked Fran Brown in the post-game press conference what was the decision to change the quarterbacks, and he simply said the team needed a spark, and I think everyone could agree with that. That first half, the offense just was not lively at all. The only reason Syracuse scored was because of that interception. Ricky Collins simply could not get this team in the red zone. He goes with Luke Carney to start the third quarter. They needed a spark. Now, here's the other interesting part that Fran Brown said. He said that Luke Carney doesn't know much of the playbook. That's why Ricky Collins came back into this game, and that either quarterback really knows much of a playbook, and they're still in a developmental phase. I think a lot of Syracuse fans are going to be frustrated by that statement because to start the season, Fran Brown said that Ricky Collins and Steve Angeli were in a head-to-head race. Begs the question, how could Ricky Collins have been in a head-to-head race if he was still developing as a quarterback? And once again, in this defeat today, it really still looks like Ricky Collins is miles away from being a legit starting quarterback for this team and for this program.
AJ, as much of a baffling statement as that is, and I'm sure that'll be a big talk throughout the week, one of the things I kind of have the question is, the defense really showed up today in terms of getting into the backfield, had 7 sacks out there today. What did you think that made the pass rush so effective out there?
Yeah, Fran Brown said it, Griffin. He said we wanted to get to the quarterback, and that's what made it so effective. They got to the quarterback. They really rattled Heinzel at times in this game. But I feel for this defense because they did everything correct today. It's just that Syracuse offense could do nothing for them until the fourth quarter when Ricky Collins all of a sudden started using his legs, but it was too little too late then. This defense can be maybe something that this team can rally around and really motivate them for the rest of the season to show, hey, we can hold teams to under 30 points maybe if they could continue these strong defensive displays. But once again, though, offensively, nothing could get going.
Yeah, AJ, I mean, it was a really tough game out there offensively, and I kind of want to touch on that some more. Obviously, you told us that Fran Brown says neither of these quarterbacks really know the playbook all too well. I'm just curious, how did you kind of see that come to action on the field?
Yeah, I think you can see Ricky Collins still, his reads aren't that great, and his ability to throw the ball down the field is just wildly inconsistent. There's times where he does throw a really good ball, but in those first 2 interceptions you saw, it just is not a good deep ball. It's inaccurate. It doesn't go to the receiver correctly whatsoever, and that's really the frustrating thing. After a bye week, it still looks like Ricky Collins is a young and inexperienced quarterback. He's gaining valuable reps, that's for sure, and the hope is for Fran Brown and this Orange team that all these reps he's getting will eventually, by the end of the year, pay off, and he'll be able to be a starting quarterback maybe next year or down the line somewhere else. But right now, it just doesn't look like Collins is comfortable in this offense. And with Luke Carney, you have to understand what Fran Brown's saying. He is just a true freshman. There's only so much he can do. I mean, they really didn't use him much at all when he came in that brief third quarter stint. And right now, I think there's a lot of questions on what the quarterback situation will be. Fran Brown did reassure all of us that Ricky Collins will be the starter against Georgia Tech next weekend.
Well, AJ, more questions than answers. It's the same thing that we had coming into this game. It feels like we're leaving with even more now. But we want to give a huge thank you for you being in the Dome. Safe travels back to our Waverly Avenue studios. But when we come back here on Orange Press Pass, we'll get to the X's and O's of how this game went down and whether or not Collins and Kearney's knowledge of the playbook truly played a factor in Syracuse's 30-13 loss.
Hi, I'm Luke Radel,
And I'm Anjanette Sam. We're your co-moderators for the Syracuse mayoral debate.
happening right here at the Veterans Center. We are so excited to welcome you in here to the KG Town Auditorium.
Doors open at 6 on Monday, October 20th.
And as debate moderators, we actually don't have that much work to do.
That's right, and that's because you're going to be asking the questions.
So be sure to come out and join us because we have a lot of seats to fill.
A lot of seats to fill. So make sure to join us for our first ever Citrus TV mayoral town hall.
Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid. A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed. I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close. I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us. But I know it's all gonna be worth it. I just want my family to be safe. But these are not my words. These are not my words. These are not my words.
Welcome back inside our Citrus TV studios as we keep cruising here on Orange Press Pass alongside Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. We've talked with AJ Myers, our reporter in the Dome. He gave us a lot of the context from that press conference. But before we keep breaking down this game, we've got to check out what's going on around the hill and with some other Syracuse teams around the 3-1-5. How about Syracuse volleyball taking down Duke in straight sets? That puts them at 4 ACC wins this season. They had just 3 a year ago.
There was a time last year when they started non-conference play absolutely dominant, and then once it came to ACC play, fell flat on its face. And now to see them again pick up consistent amounts of ACC wins is really good for the program.
Duke had swept the Orange last year in volleyball. Some other scores that we definitely got to focus on. Pittsburgh taking down Syracuse in football and on the pitch. 4-2, a loss for SU in men's soccer, and that was a tough one. Goalkeeper Tomas Hunt didn't look his best, but that Pitt offense was dominant.
You can't miss as well that field hockey game between number 2 North Carolina and number 9 Syracuse. That was a close one, came down to the wire the final minute. Now let's switch focuses though back to football and let's go around the NCAA because there were some incredible upsets throughout all of today. We talked about it a little earlier on our pregame show Q's Countdown that Vanderbilt beating LSU, but how about BYU taking down Utah? That was a good one, John.
Oh yeah, BYU taken down by 3. They come out undefeated, still 7-0 on the year. That's a big win in the Holy War, and plus that Vanderbilt LSU game. Vanderbilt 6-1 for the first time since 1950.
That's huge, and I think if you look back over in the ACC, there's some bigger headlines, though. Miami last night, they lose, opens up the ACC play a little bit, and also knocks down a top 3 team. And then again, Georgia Tech just keeps on cruising. Brent Key is going to be a really big deal this offseason, and it probably won't be in Atlanta.
All right, now we've got to really reel it back in to the Syracuse versus Pitt game. We just heard from AJ this idea that neither Ricky Collins or Luke Kearney truly know the playbook, maybe to the extent that Steve Angeli did. And that's where we really have to start. With the 2 quarterbacks seeing action today, Griffin, it was a little bit of mixed variety from them both.
It was, you start the second half with Luke Kearney, and that was kind of confusing how you did that to not really give him a full shot, because once he went out there, he essentially just ran the ball the whole time, so you didn't really give him a full shot. So that's just kind of confusing the way that ended. Ricky Collins, came back in the game for the rest of the second half and looked decent, but just kind of confusing approach all around.
Griffin, you said it. Kearney was just 2 of 3 for 10 yards passing, had the same amount of rushing yards as Nixon, which is a little bit concerning, but he had 9 on the game. Again, Kearney really didn't get that much action in this one, whereas Collins was the primary starter, but It's not like he looked all that much better. 2 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. That's already 7 as the starter. Just insane stuff from Ricky Collins.
Well, it might explain why Carney wasn't throwing the ball and getting as many opportunities downfield. Potentially because he didn't know who or what to do if given the situations lining up in the shotgun spot. But it didn't help Carney either, the fact that the offensive line was getting blown through left, right, and center. The Pitt defense, which we knew was going to attack early and often, was stacking the box with 7 defenders and getting to the pocket clean as day. John, there wasn't much time for either of these young QBs to breathe in general, and that's just because the O-line hasn't given them a chance to have success.
Oh, no, not in the slightest. I mean, Pitt already had 2 sacks and then 6 TFLs on the game. That was for a combined 35 total yards that SU lost. Ricky Collins was running for his life out there, Griffin. It was insane to watch.
It really was. He's playing consistently out of the pocket, which is something where he continuously seems to do well, but having to play from behind the chains is a really big problem for this team who's already not seen a ton of success on offense. It's just not a good look for your team to continue to have to put your quarterback, who's not been successful, in even worse positions week after week, and not to be able to run the ball, which has been a strength at times for this year.
And the rushing offense just really bleak for this Syracuse team. They haven't been able to open that up, and it hasn't seen success. But Pitt's defense was absolutely incredible in the trenches. So was Syracuse's. Coming into the game through 6 games, the Orange had 8 sacks. Today against the Panthers, they had 7. I mean, Griffin, this defensive line was getting to the true freshman QB in Henschel.
Which is so weird because it's not something you've seen at all this season, of that the defensive line all of a sudden wants to be this big dominant force. So he came at the right time against the true freshman, getting him off his spot. Eventually just wasn't enough. Made a lot of big plays. The opportunities were there, but just wasn't quite working. It wasn't enough. They tried their absolute best, the most that Pitt's allowed all season. So a great effort from Syracuse. Hopefully they can get momentum with this moving forward.
SU columnist Chris Carlson a couple weeks ago, when this team was really playing at its worst, said, in order to be a good defense, you got to get to the quarterback, and SU doesn't have that. And, well, it showed in those prior games, but today, this was a totally new front 7, and I think that's probably the most inspiring thing that SU is going to take out of this game, mostly because there weren't many inspiring things. But again, 7 sacks, and then a total of 5 TFLs after that. So 44 total yards that they got off of Pitt, and that really made Henschel work for his yards today, which he didn't get many of them.
Kevin Joey was a man on a mission out there, 3 sacks. It'd be really good to see how he can step up going forward, maybe play on the opposite side of David Reese.
Despite Syracuse's defense having a plethora of success, it ultimately was the Panthers that came out on top. So who's going to be our Orange Press Pass player of the game? Well, how about the man that had a 66-yard punt return touchdown in Kenny Johnson? Their wide receiver finished the game with 59 receiving yards on just 4 catches. He was a problem, wide open everywhere for this Panthers squad. But the fact that he has an ability to be impactful on special teams also made him a threat all day long. So Kenny Johnson, our player of the game. But when we come back, Griffin and John will be taking their pick on this QB battle. Highly contested and a new wrinkle with what Fran Brown said. You won't want to go anywhere. Orange Press Pass rolls on. Welcome back inside our Citrus TV studios, where we've gone from the desk to the wall, alongside Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. We're still breaking down this Syracuse loss to Pitt 30-13, but we're going to get a little bit more opinionated now because these guys, they're going to take their pick. All right, normally in a Take Your Pick segment, we'd have a lot of topics, a couple of questions, I'd get their thoughts. There's one glaring issue in this game, and that is the quarterback struggle. Ricky Collins was thought to be the man that was going to play QB the entire game. Fran Brown said, Ricky is my guy. And then to start the third quarter, true freshman Luke Carney took the first snaps for the Orange. So, Griffin, I'll ask you this question. Is it Collins to go forward for the Orange? Or is it Carney?
I'm going to keep going with Ricky Collins. It's going to be pretty simple to me. He said after the game that the quarterbacks don't know the playbook. Well, that is crazy on both ends. Luke Carney was on this team last year. How does he not know the playbook? In 2 years, Ricky Collins just got to campus in December. And again, Ricky Collins just seems to have more tools overall. Obviously, it hasn't been pretty, but at this point, just got to ride it out with Ricky and hope for the best in one way, shape, or the other. Is not quite sure what else you're going to do. I don't think you've seen enough from Luke Carney to believe he earns a chance at that job.
Well, Griffin, here's my thing. If they both don't know the playbook, and one of them rolled out there and didn't have an interception in their first 3 passes, then that's almost leading me to believe that Luke Carney is the answer for the Orange. And that is absurd to say. And that is not something that I thought I would be talking about on our airwaves right now. But oh my Lord. Ricky Collins has not changed. He had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and they looked the exact same on the field. And when Luke Carney was playing, he was putting his head down. He was lunging forward again. 9 rushing yards on 3 carries, plus just 10 yards passing, but on only 3 attempts. So I would say in the very small sample size that we got in Luke Carney, I already almost liked him more than watching Ricky Collins, because those 3 interceptions, 2 of them terrible. The third one, maybe dismissible, but still
dismissed with the guy in the hands.
Okay, and then he was still throwing into double coverage, and that was the 3rd time he'd gone to Darryl Gill down the field.
Right in the hands. That one cannot be his fault. The other 2, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. The other 2 were terrible. He underthrew his receivers by a mile, or it was just a poorly placed ball. He almost had a 3rd interception well before that when he missed Dan Villari by 5 yards when he was 5 yards in front of him.
Well, I'm not here to jump in, but there maybe could have been a thought of, if you're Fran Brown, to put a guy like Carney in to maybe light a fire underneath Ricky Collins. But you see it popped up behind us. There were a lot of thoughts about Luke Carney coming into the game, and also just about Ricky Collins playing QB. I mean, come up here to this. Top one in the right corner. It's insane that Ricky Collins is still playing QB for Syracuse University. He is so bad. I know he didn't look great, John, but still, you felt like there was promise, especially after Carney came out. There was almost a fire lit underneath Ricky Collins.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. I think this was almost Fran Brown saying, hey, you think you're the man, but you're going to come out and play like this and seemingly not take any of the advice that you're being given? Well, guess what? You're on the bench now. And here's Luke Carney, and he might be here to stay. Obviously, that didn't end up being the case, but these tweets show just as much confusion as we all had back here, because the decision itself was odd and unexpected, but it almost felt like if you were going to put Luke Carney in the game, he was your guy. Clearly, that's not the case, but I would say moving forward, you got to see what you're getting out of both of them in practice, but just a really odd transition.
I think moving forward, regardless of who you like better or not, it just needs to be one person. You can't be flip-flopping left and right. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. That's the old saying, but it's the truth. There's no reason to make this big grand gesture and then just do nothing with it. That makes utterly no sense. Just stick to your guy. If that's Ricky Collins, that's great. If it's Luke Carney, that's great. This team already just kind of, the rest of the season is kind of shot. Just figure out what you want to do and go with one guy.
All right, there's a lot of variance in how this Orange press pass is going down, and this is another one of those situations. Normally, we'd break down the true X's and O's of a turning point in this game, but this isn't just one in the game, but in the season. This image right here, Luke Carney getting snaps to start the second half for Syracuse football. The true freshman taking over for Ricky Collins, Fran Brown's guy. The fact that that happened, he didn't start the game. Ricky Collins was benched. Luke Carney took his spot. That can mark the turning point in where Syracuse can eventually say Luke Carney is the guy going forward and Ricky Collins' time in orange is done. Either way, our time here on Orange Press Pass is also almost done. When we come back, we're going to hit on a couple of other things, our predictions from Q's Countdown beforehand, and Griffin and John, they're going to sound off.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Just a couple of minutes to wrap up shop in a 30-13 loss for Syracuse football against Pitt, alongside Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. We had a couple of predictions. We thought this was going to be a blowout game in Q's Countdown, but if you take a look at where it is, gentlemen, we actually moved up the scoreboard because we were all right with our records, but the point differentials, they're looking a little rough, especially me and John's.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling pretty good. Just 1 point off today. I said 31-13, just sitting at 30-13. I'm up there with great company with the great duo of Milo and Ben.
Look, while my prediction might not have been the greatest, I predicted
a 30. You're down 28.
Okay, look, I predicted a 35-point win for Pitt in this game, and that felt like a 35-point win, so I'll take that as a mental W.
Well, Syracuse is going to try to limit the 35-point wins with their upcoming schedule. It's not going to be easy, though, when they have to face a ranked Georgia Tech team that could very well sneak into the top 10 with this new AP poll. After that, it gets even tougher. You have Bill Belichick in North Carolina in the Dome on Halloween, and a couple of ranked foes in Miami and Notre Dame as well.
I think that Georgia Tech game is actually going to be the hardest game you have left on your schedule. Not only are you going to have a lot of QB controversy going into next week, last year, Georgia Tech was a little bit feisty in the post-game press conference with Fran Brown, and they're here with a vengeance this year.
Yeah, and while
So, both our guys have had a plethora of things to say throughout today's game, but now it's time for them to really get anything off their chest. It's time for Griffin and John to sound off.
My sound off is pretty simple. You saw some good today, and the best part was it was the pass rush. And my sound off is going to be, got to keep that genie and capture it in a bottle. Because that pass rush today, 7 sacks, was huge and something you could really build momentum with going into the rest of the season. If you can keep that from game to game, and that's be something you can bring week to week, that would be huge and be a difference maker the rest of the year.
Griffin, momentum is something that this team hasn't had in a long, long time. And that's why my sound off has to be about the most prevalent part of this game, which was figure it out, right? Figure out the game plan, because clearly there is none at quarterback right now. When it comes to putting in Luke Carney for a drive and a half, the fact that I have to say a half is a whole other argument in its own. But clearly, it seems like Fran Brown's a little lost on who he wants. He says Ricky Collins is going to be the guy against Georgia Tech, but when that's inevitably a blowout, well, then what happens? Because this team has lost it all, and while the pass rush may have been fun today, you cannot avoid the glaring mistakes that SU made at quarterback tonight.
Well, they're going to certainly try to figure it out, John. When they take the field in a week from today, On October 25th, they take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who did pick up a nice ACC win over Duke, and now they're going to get a chance to go down and really improve their season to 8-0. Syracuse, though, they want to get back to 500. They're going to need to figure out that quarterback battle, as well as that defensive line looking to attack against Haynes King, who has had an absolute stellar season. We've got just a couple of seconds to wrap up shop. So we really want to say a huge thank you. It's been wall-to-wall coverage here in our Citrus TV studios. Over 7 hours we've been here covering the game. From AJ Myers, from John Boccio, from Griffin, Marcy, from our producers, Dan Papillo and Gabe Perrin. I've been Nathaniel Cunningham. Syracuse, have a sophisticated evening.